United States of America, a land of many pastimes, baseball, apple pie, barbecue, and dare I say, maybe somewhat biased, roller coasters. While second in the world to China when it comes to quantity, when it comes to pure quality and diversity of coaster types, nobody does it better than the US. And of the 50 states, thankfully 47 of them are home to at least one operating roller coaster. In my first two videos of this series, I covered the states that ranked number 50 through number 31, judging them based on their roller coaster collection. And please, if you'd like, of course, definitely check those out before viewing this part. As in this third edition, we'll consequently go over states number 30 through number 21. We are far past the states with just a few kiddie coasters here and there, or maybe a mountain coaster or two. All of the states remaining have at least one significant amusement park and one significant roller coaster going forward. We're getting to the good stuff all, as we creep ever closer to those top 10 states. It's part 3, everyone, of the best roller coaster states in the US. So where are we going for number 30, all? Let's head up to the beautiful and gorgeous Pacific Northwest for the state of Washington, home to 10 roller coasters. If there is a major city in the US that is more deserving of a brand new amusement park one day, it's Seattle. The 12th most populated in the country by metro area, has the absolute bare minimum when it comes to parks. I briefly mentioned in my Rhode Island segment that there's a park called Wild Waves, about a half hour south of Seattle, that is incredibly small, and from all accounts, kind of meh. And that's all Seattle really has for a significant park. They have that previously mentioned corkscrew, a rare S&S wooden coaster called Timberhawk, a wild mouse, a kiddie coaster, and that's it. Thankfully, though, Washington also has the Washington State Fair nearby, and yeah, you try to pronounce the town that that's in. I'm not doing it. But it has a permanent old-school 1935 Woody called Classic Coaster, which supposedly gives some crazy scary airtime. The bad news about this credit, however, is this fair is only open for 4 days in April and 3 weeks in September, so plan your trip accordingly. I should also mention they have a stunning looking alpine coaster called Tumwater Twister in Leavenworth that just opened last year in 2023. One of the best views of any coaster in the US. But Washington and the Seattle area definitely deserve better. And the myth that, it rains too much, I mean, sure, it does, but fun fact, the Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Cleveland area, they actually receive more precipitation yearly than Seattle. And I think those cities are doing okay amusement park-wise. I'm just saying. Time for number 29. And guess what, guys? It's finally a place I got to cover in my 2023 reviews. Which, by the way, if you're new here, I actually did a review for every single day of the year. Hence my Coaster 365 name. Definitely go back and watch all 365 if you haven't yet. I'm obviously kidding. Or am I? Anyway, number 29 is the Sooner State of Oklahoma. They also get 10 roller coasters here, a mix of kiddie rides and SBF visas throughout, but enthusiasts come here for one reason only, and that's for the very underrated and charming Frontier City in Oklahoma City. Technically a Six Flags park, but without any of that corporate feel. Such a cute little place, with a pretty darn good coaster collection. Couple of family rides and a kiddie coaster, and a Vekoma suspended coaster in Steel Lasso. A very mediocre Woody in Wildcat, but dare I say a decent little 1-2 punch with their Schwarzkopf Silver Bullet and an Arrow Shuttle Loop Diamondback. Both surprisingly smooth, with fantastic positive forces and airtime respectively. Diamondback especially is legit one of my favorite arrows, period. Don't ignore Frontier City, it's not a park to skip, and I'm really glad the Oklahoma City area gets a park of this quality. At the number 28 spot, a state that, according to some, can be a pretty sweet home. Alabama, of course. The Roll Tide State. That's got to be its nickname, right? I'm sorry, Auburn. Anyway, Alabama has a total of 11 roller coasters, a majority of them at 2 different amusement parks. First, we got Tropic Falls outside of Mobile, formerly the park at Oa, one of America's newest parks, just opening in 2017. Their coaster of significance is called Rollin' Thunder, which, if you've been on Thunderbolt at Luna Park in Coney Island, it's actually the same ride. However, supposedly a more improved and smoother version from Zamperla. More notably, though, Alabama's other park, just outside of Birmingham, is appropriately named Alabama Adventure. Nothing of note here coaster-wise for the 2024 season anyway, because they do have a big wooden coaster called Rampage, a highly praised CCI that opened in 1998. It will unfortunately be closed, however, for the 2024 season. For a good reason, though, as it'll be receiving a full retrack by all accounts of the steel variety, to hopefully make sure it's running as well as ever when it reopens in 2025. While Rollin' Thunder looks thrilling, Rampage is truly the coaster that got Alabama into the top 30. Let's go back north, everyone, for the number 27 best roller coaster state, that being the live free or die state of New Hampshire. The fun fact about New Hampshire is that with 10 coasters, it actually has more roller coasters per population than any other state in the country. When you're in northern New England, you know you're bound to have some mountain coasters, of which New Hampshire has 2. But surprisingly, the Granite State has not 1, not 2, but 3 parks here. Santa's Village and Storyland, way up in the White Mountains, are of course mostly for kids, but not Storyland's Rorosaurus though. Probably the best coaster mentioned on the entire list so far, with some legit awesome airtime. It may be a family park, but this is a ride every enthusiast will fall in love with. Down south, towards the Massachusetts border, you'll find their most popular park, the very charming Canopy Lake in Salem, with a classic 1936 wooden coaster in Yankee Cannonball, and a more modern, well-themed Gerstlauer Eurofighter in Untamed. This park gets busy though, technically being Boston's home park. But overall, despite being a small state, New Hampshire is doing very, very well for itself, with an awesome little variety of fun coaster experiences for all ages. We have come to the end of the first half of this epic list, bringing us to the number 26 best coaster state, that being Michigan. Upping the cred count to a whopping 16 here, a very nice quantity. It suffers a tad, though, when it comes to quality. Michigan loves the SPF visa here, having a total of 3 spread around the state. You got CJ Barrymore's in Clinton, which has a couple of coasters, including a very rare, at least in the States, Pinfari looping coaster. But if you're an enthusiast, you know Michigan for being the home of the incredibly neglected Cedar Fair Park, Michigan's Adventure in Muskegon, while having a solid collection of 7 roller coasters, an Arrow Corkscrew, an Arrow Wild Mouse, a somewhat decent Vekoma SLC, a family wooden coaster, and an old, but recently retracked Din Woody and Wolverine Wildcat. But they haven't received a new coaster in the 21st century. I feel for you, Michigan's Adventure. So why is Michigan so high? Well, included in that high quantity, I have not mentioned what is by far their best coaster, and one of the best wooden coasters in the country, period, Shivering Timbers. One of the best front row rides that I've ever experienced. It's one of the few wooden rides with legit floater airtime, with huge hill after huge hill, giving the feel of the steel B&M hypers that came after it. It's why enthusiasts go to Michigan, and despite being in a semi-remote location, Shivering Timbers is worth it, and why Michigan is as high as number 26. It's the top 25, baby. We made it. So let's kick it off with a bang, visiting the stunning state of Idaho. You know they got a mountain coaster. It is Idaho, after all. You know they probably have a random SBF visa, and they do. But Idaho only has 9 credits. Why number 25 then? Well, welcome to one of the most underrated and purely beautiful parks in the nation, Silverwood. Home to 7 roller coasters, all of them of high quality and fun for the entire family. While I did not get to cover Silverwood for the channel yet, I have had the pleasure of visiting this park, specifically for the premiere of This Is How We Roll from my amazing friends at Coaster Studios. And speaking of RMC, they're conveniently just 15 minutes down the road from Silverwood. Also, speaking of RMC, we've come to our first on this list with the eye popping Stunt Pilot, one of the smoothest Raptors that have opened so far, this one opening in 2021, and a fantastic addition to this park. They also have a Vekoma giant boomerang called Aftershock that, while closed on my visit, I hear is a ton of fun. They actually have the original Arrow Corkscrew, which was formerly at Knott's Berry Farm, and they have an awesome 1-2 wooden punch in Timber Terror, a very fun coaster, and maybe the most underrated wooden coaster in the country in Tremors, a fantastic CCI with some of that new 208 track from RMC. Airtime, tunnels, great scenery, everything I love in a good wooden ride. Can you tell I love Silverwood? I can't wait to get back here one day because it's truly a gem of a park. I had zero hesitation in putting Idaho at 25, a place every enthusiast must go one day. Speaking of a state with a whole lot of wooden coasters, that trend continues with the number 24 state of Wisconsin. Oh yes, one of the few states that have way more significant wooden coasters than steel. Let's first talk about the only Wisconsin park that I haven't been to, Bay Beach, way up in Green Bay, home to Zippin' Pippin'. This was a rebuild of the original Zippin' Pippin' in Memphis, which was the favorite ride of Elvis, who apparently marathoned this thing just days before his death. And it has, what some have said, one of the craziest airtime moments of any coaster, period. We also go to the very local and kinda sketchy park of Little America in the absolute middle of nowhere. It's home to a family wooden coaster, a crazy 1950s Herschel Wild Mouse, and the country's only Chance Toboggan. This thing is, absolutely mental. Speaking of sketchy parks, let's head to Mount Olympus in Wisconsin Dells, home to 4 different Greek mythology themed wooden coasters, and maybe the least IDGAF operations in the country. Pegasus and Cyclops are fun, if also a little janky and weird wooden coasters. Zeus, while not the most known coaster here, it's probably their best. Damn good ride and layout. But the star of the show, not just at Mount Olympus, but in all of Wisconsin, Hades 360. This gravity group has one of the best wooden layouts in the world, with insanely dark and creative underground airtime tunnels, a freaking inversion, and just a super long ride time. But it is still, to this day, the roughest wooden coaster I've ever been on. What could be with Hades? Legitimately top 3 in the country potential. And if ever properly retracked, which I really hope it is one day, Wisconsin would absolutely jump up some spots from number 24. The next state may be number 23 for roller coasters, but it's used to being number 1 in some other areas. Firstly, in my opinion, for pizza. And secondly, without argument, the college basketball capital of the world, the home of the back-to-back national champion UConn Huskies. It's Connecticut all. Can you tell who my alma mater is? I think you can. Anyway, Connecticut. Small state, but some really big thrills. Let's start with the incredibly small but very homey park of Quasi. Remember Rorosaurus? They have a very similar ride here too, the awesome Wooden Warrior from Gravity Group, with some of the best pure airtime in all of New England. Connecticut's main park, though, is America's oldest, the 1846 Lake Compounce. In a recent video, I actually gave an update on their ancient 1927 wooden coaster Wildcat, previously known as being one of the country's worst, but thanks to a new retrack, it's actually really dang good now. They also have one of the better Vekoma boomerangs, and one of, if not the, best premier Skyrocket 2s in Phobia Fear Coaster, sans comfort collars. And shockingly, the only coaster with a launch in all of New England. There's one more to talk about, of course. The legendary, award-winning, some still say best wooden coaster in the US, Boulder Dash. An incredible, rushing journey through the woods and the length of the actual lake compounds. This thing is still one of the most creative and best wooden coasters ever made. and is truly the reason enthusiasts always add Connecticut to their Northeast roller coaster road trip. While only having 8 coasters, what Connecticut doesn't have in quantity, it certainly has in quality, making its number 23 spot a valid placement. At number 22, I'm feeling it's time to take a trip to heaven. And some have compared this state to heaven, but in reality, no, it's Iowa. Despite the knock of it being one of those flyover and middle of nowhere states, Iowa is a surprising hotbed for roller coasters, with 3 parks of note, and all 3 being completely different from each other. I had the opportunity to go to all 3 over a 36-hour period last July, and had a wonderful time at each. Let's start with quite possibly the most remote park in the country, Arnold's Park. That's essentially at the Iowa, South Dakota, Minnesota tri-point. Ton of family charm here, with a fun and smooth old Woody in Legend. And that crazy Herschel Wildmouse, the same model that I just mentioned at Little America, they have one here too. Lost Island in Waterloo is one of the most unique and bizarre theme parks ever made. Notably because it is indeed a theme park. A great one at that, just located in Iowa. What? Their Vekoma SLC Napuko air coaster is, to put it bluntly, horrendous. But the relocated roller coaster from Sweden, Matugani, an intimate launch coaster, is very, very good and a great fit for the park. I really hope this gem of a place can boost their attendance this season because it deserves all the love. But finally, there's Iowa's true major amusement park in Adventureland. Solid collection here, with a couple of decent Woodies in Tornado and Outlaw, the craziest SNS 4D free spin ever made in Dragon Slayer. Good lord, does this thing flip and flip and flip you over and over again. But the star of the show is the Gerstlauer Infinity Coaster Monster, which is, in my opinion, the best in the US from this manufacturer. A great drop, a wonderful mix of air and hang time. Man, this trio of Iowa parks makes for a solid little trip. And I personally love to see a, quote, "there's nothing to do here" state stereotype get busted with these destinations. We finish part 3 with the number 21 state, and it's back to the East Coast we go for the state of Maryland. Ironically, its placement in this list, number 21, is also how many coasters they have. That quantity is a big reason Maryland ranks so high, because quality-wise, it's probably far from the best. There's a total of 5 credits in the beach destination of Ocean City, 2 including a Vekoma Boomerang at Shrimpers Rides, 3 including a Pinfari Looper at Jolly Roger at the Pier. There's also 3 at a place called Adventure Park USA in Monrovia, with both a Zamperla Windstorm and Schwarzkopf Wildcat model. But Maryland's major amusement park is the much criticized and ridiculed Six Flags America. This is another one of those parks that I have been to just before I started my channel. 8 roller coasters here, all being to okay to maybe kind of good. Their worst, in my opinion, is their Vekoma SLC Mind Eraser, or should I say Professor Screamore's Skywinder, as it's going to be known when it reopens, which is hopefully better with that re-theme. They have 2 wooden coasters here, one being technically now the oldest in the country, the 1917 Wild One, and one of the first GCIs in Roar, which many enthusiasts are chanting RMC, RMC. I get it, it's just okay. Batwing is their super forceful Vekoma Flying Dutchman, which depending on who you ask is seen as great or awful. Joker's Jinx is a very solid premier launch coaster, similar to the Flight of Fears at King's Dominion and Kings Island, and Poltergeist at Fiesta, Texas. And finally, they have an intimate hyper called Superman Ride of Steel, with an incredibly odd layout, but with some really fun moments. This park needs some serious love, though, which it appears it's getting in 2024. So here's hoping it can get that truly great coaster one day, which it's absolutely lacking as we speak right now. Alright, that was a big one all. A lot to say in part 3. But clearly we've reached a point in this massive list where the parks and coasters keep getting better and better. Such will be the case for episode 4 of this series, as we begin the top 20 with states number 20 through number 11. I hope you tune into that video, which will be released sometime next week, and I hope you've enjoyed this video as well as this series and channel as a whole. You are all the best of the best. Thank you so much for such wonderful, continued, and consistent support. What do you say, guys? Let's do it all again next week.